The arena on Space Station Helios 7 was crowded with thousands of aliens from every corner of the galaxy. The air buzzed with excitement, and the sounds of dozens of different languages mixing together. Bright lights shone down on the massive fighting ring in the center, where the greatest warriors in the Galactic Coalition came to prove their strength. Captain stood in the observation deck with his crew, looking down at the arena floor below. He was the leader of Earth's first diplomatic mission to the stars. Humans had only joined the Galactic Coalition 6 months ago, and everything was still new and strange. Next to him stood Lieutenant, his head of security. She was a small woman with dark hair tied back in a tight bun, her face calm and unreadable as always. "This is quite a spectacle," said the team's scientist, adjusting his glasses as he studied the crowd. "I count at least 40 different species present." "They're all here to watch, Commander," replied the medical officer. She pulled up information on her data pad. "He's from the Empire. Their species evolved on a planet with gravity twice as strong as Earth's. They're considered the greatest warriors in the known galaxy." Watched as a massive figure entered the arena. Commander stood over 7 feet tall, his body covered in thick chitinous armor that looked like it grew directly from his skin. The plates were deep purple and black, gleaming under the lights. His face was angular and sharp, with multiple eyes that glowed like red embers. He carried a huge curved sword that must have weighed 50 pounds at least. The blade was made from the hardest metal in the galaxy. The crowd roared as raised his sword above his head. He moved to the center of the arena and his voice boomed out, amplified by hidden speakers. "I am Commander of the Empire. For 3 cycles, I have stood undefeated in this arena. I have faced the strongest warriors from every world. Now I ask again, is there anyone brave enough to challenge me?" Several aliens in the crowd cheered and shouted. Noticed that most species seemed to treat with a mixture of respect and fear. Continued speaking, his voice dripping with pride. "I have fought the stone-skinned, I have defeated the lightning-fast, I have broken the bones of the mighty." He paused, then his eyes seemed to scan the observation decks. "But I see we have new members in our coalition. The humans, yes. The soft, weak creatures from that low-gravity world called Earth." Felt his stomach tighten. This wasn't good. "Tell me," called out, "are humans even capable of combat? Or are you only good for talking and making treaties?" Some aliens in the crowd laughed. "Perhaps you should return to your small blue planet and leave the warrior's path to true fighters." Felt shift beside him. He glanced at her and saw her jaw was clenched tight. Her hands, usually relaxed at her sides, were now curled into fists. "Ignore him," said quietly. "It's not worth it." "He's insulting our entire species," replied, her voice level but cold. "In front of 40 different civilizations." "I know, but—" "If I accept his challenge, I can respond to the insult directly. It's within coalition law." Turn to face her fully. "Look at him. He's twice your size. His species evolved to be fighters. Our medical data shows are 8 times stronger than most coalition species." "I'm aware of the data, sir." "Then you know this is suicide." Finally looked at him and saw something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, more like cold determination. "Captain, permission to speak freely." "Granted." "I grew up in Seoul. My grandmother survived the occupation. My father taught me that there are some insults you can walk away from and some you can't. If we let this stand, every species in the coalition will think they can push us around." She paused. "We're not weak. It's time they learned that." Before could respond, tapped her communicator. "This is Lieutenant of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. I accept Commander's challenge." The arena fell silent. Every eye turned toward the human observation deck. His heart sank. Laughter echoed through the arena. It sounded like metal scraping against stone. "A human accepts, a small human female." He laughed again. "This will be over in seconds. Come down, little human. Let me show the galaxy what happens when prey pretends to be a predator." was already moving toward the exit, grabbed her arm. "Please reconsider. We can find another way too." "With respect, sir, the challenge is accepted. Coalition law says it must proceed." She gently pulled her arm free. "Don't worry, Captain. I know what I'm doing." Stepped forward, his face pale. "The medical data is clear. Bone structure is 3 times denser than human. Their muscle fibers can generate." "I've read the reports, all of them." Gave him a small smile. "Trust me." Was frantically typing on her data pad. "I'm pulling up every piece of information we have on physiology. Maybe there's a weakness we can exploit, something." "I'll be fine," said calmly. She began walking toward the arena entrance. "Just watch." Stood frozen as she disappeared down the corridor. Around him, his crew looked terrified. On his communicator, he saw messages flooding in from Earth Command, all asking the same thing. What was happening? Why had a human accepted a combat challenge from a warrior? He didn't have a good answer. Down in the arena, was performing for the crowd, swinging his massive sword in complex patterns. Each movement was precise and powerful. The blade cut through the air with a whistling sound. Then the opposite door opened, and walked out onto the arena floor. She looked tiny compared to. She wore simple black combat clothing with no armor at all. Her boots were standard military issue. She had no weapons, no shield, nothing except her bare hands. She walked calmly to the center of the arena, her posture relaxed and confident. The crowd was murmuring. Some were laughing, others seemed concerned. Heard one alien nearby say to another, "This is a mistake. Humans don't understand what they've joined. That creature will kill her in one strike." A floating orb of light descended from the ceiling. This was the referee, a species of pure energy given form. Its voice resonated in everyone's mind rather than their ears. "The challenge has been accepted. The rules are simple. Combat continues until one fighter yields or becomes unable to continue. Lethal force is permitted. Medical teams stand ready. Do both combatants understand?" "Yes," growled, never taking his eyes off. "I understand," said quietly. "Then prepare yourselves. The rows higher, begin." Immediately raised his sword and roared. The sound was deafening, meant to terrify. He charged forward, his massive feet pounding the arena floor. Didn't move. She simply stood and watched him come, her expression completely calm. Gripped the railing of the observation deck, his knuckles white. He couldn't watch, but he couldn't look away. This was either going to change everything or end in disaster, and there was nothing he could do but wait and see which. Sword came down like a falling meteor. The massive blade cut through the air where had been standing just a moment before, but she wasn't there anymore. She had stepped to the side at the last possible second, so close that the wind from the blade's passage stirred her hair. The sword hit the arena floor with a loud clang, cutting a deep groove into the reinforced metal. Pulled it free and spun around, searching for his opponent. Had moved to his left, just out of easy reach. She stood with her hands open at her sides, watching him carefully. Her breathing was slow and steady. Her eyes tracked every movement made. "Stand still, human," snarled. He swung his sword in a horizontal arc, the blade moving fast enough to blur. Again, ducked under it, rolling forward and coming up on his other side. "Fight me properly." In the observation deck, leaned forward. "She's fast," he muttered. "Faster than she should be," said, checking his data pad. "According to our measurements, Lieutenant is moving at speeds that should be impossible for human musculature. Unless," he trailed off, typing rapidly. "Unless what?" demanded. "Unless she's been training in higher gravity. Our ship maintains Earth-standard gravity, but if she's been using the enhanced training rooms," looked up, his eyes wide. "She's been preparing for this, for months." Down in the arena was getting frustrated. He had thrown 7 attacks now, each one powerful enough to cut a grown in half. Every single one had missed. The small human woman was always just out of reach, moving with a grace that seemed effortless. The crowd's laughter had stopped. Now they were watching in silence, unsure what to make of what they were seeing. This wasn't how these fights usually went. Most challengers tried to block or dodge the first strike and failed. Very few lasted longer than 30 seconds against. It had been 2 minutes, and the human hadn't even been touched. Changed his strategy. Instead of big powerful swings, he started using faster strikes, jabs, and cuts that came in quick combinations. Left, right, overhead, low sweep. He pushed forward, trying to drive into a corner where she couldn't dodge. But read every move before it happened. She watched his shoulders, his hips, the way his weight shifted. In her previous life before joining the diplomatic corps, she had spent 12 years training in martial arts, taekwondo, hapkido, and judo. She had studied not just how to fight, but how to read an opponent's body language. Every attack announced itself in tiny ways before it happened. She slipped past a thrust aimed at her chest. She bent backward as the sword whistled over her head. She pivoted and moved like water flowing around rocks. The movements looked simple, but each one required perfect timing and complete awareness of her surroundings. Breathing was getting heavier now. Were incredibly strong, but their bodies burned energy quickly. The thick chitinous armor that protected them also trapped heat. Already, small vents along his neck were opening to let out steam. His breathing hadn't changed at all. "Impossible," growled a large alien in the observation deck near. It looked like a bear crossed with a lizard. "Humans are weak species, low endurance. They should tire quickly." Smiled despite his worry. "You haven't been reading our biology reports very carefully. Humans are endurance hunters. We evolved to chase prey across long distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. We might not be the fastest or strongest, but we can keep going longer than almost anything." The bear lizard alien looked confused, then concerned. It turned back to watch the fight with new interest. 3 minutes had passed, then 4, was really struggling now. His attacks were still powerful but less precise. Sweat poured down his armored face. His multiple eyes were wide with confusion and growing fear. This wasn't supposed to happen. Nothing lasted this long against him. Nothing. "You mock me," he roared suddenly. "You run like a coward. You have not thrown a single attack." Stopped moving. She stood about 10 feet away from him, perfectly balanced on the balls of her feet. "I'm not mocking you," she said calmly. "I'm learning." "Learning what?" "How you move, how you think, where you're strong." She tilted her head slightly. "And where you're weak." His pride exploded into rage. He charged forward with a wild overhead strike, putting all his strength into one massive blow. His sword came down with enough force to crack stone. This time didn't dodge. She moved forward, inside his reach. As the sword descended, she raised her left hand and struck his wrist from the side. The blow hit precisely at the joint where his armor plates met. His grip faltered for just a moment, and the angle of his sword changed by a few degrees. It was enough. The blade missed his head by inches and slammed into the floor beside her. Before could react, struck him in the center of his chest with her palm. It looked like a gentle push. Staggered backward 3 steps, his eyes wide with shock. The crowd gasped. That push should have done nothing to him. His armor was too thick, his body too massive. But somehow the force had gone through his armor and struck directly at his sternum. His breath caught in his throat. For the first time in 3 cycles of being undefeated, felt something he hadn't experienced in combat since he was a young warrior in training. Fear had struck him once, and it had hurt more than any blow he'd received from opponents twice his size. How was that possible? "You were right," said, still calm. "I haven't attacked yet. I was being respectful, giving you a chance to understand what you're facing." She shifted her stance, moving into a ready position. "But you insulted my people. You called us weak. You called us prey." She moved forward and suddenly saw something in her eyes that froze his blood. It was the look of a predator sizing up prey, the exact opposite of what he had expected. "We're not prey, Commander," said quietly. "We're the things that prey evolved to run from." She attacked. Her movements were so fast that most of the crowd couldn't follow them. She closed the distance in a heartbeat, slipped under his guard, and struck him 3 times in rapid succession. Ribs, solar plexus, throat. Each blow hit a gap in his armor, a weak point he didn't know he had. Swung his sword desperately, trying to drive her back, but was inside his reach now, too close for the long blade to be effective. She moved around him like a dancer, striking pressure points and joints with surgical precision. Another hit to his wrist, and this time his fingers went numb. The sword fell from his grasp and clattered on the floor. Tried to grab her with his bare hands. If he could just get hold of this tiny creature, he could use his superior strength to crush her, but his hands closed on empty air. She was always just out of reach, even when she seemed to be standing still. The crowd was on their feet now, shouting in dozens of languages. No one could believe what they were seeing. The undefeated warrior was being dismantled by a human half his size. Watched with his mouth hanging open. "I knew she was good," he whispered, "but this is incredible." Was recording everything on her medical scanner. Her efficiency is perfect. Every movement serves a purpose. No wasted energy, no unnecessary motion. It's beautiful. Nodded slowly. She's not fighting with strength. She's fighting with knowledge, with technique, with precision. He looked up at the massive alien warrior stumbling around the arena, and against that, raw power means nothing. In the arena was breathing hard now, his armor dented in several places. Stood a few feet away, barely winded. She hadn't even broken a sweat. "Do you yield?" she asked. His pride wouldn't let him. He reached for his sword with his still-functioning hand. "Never." Sighed, "Then I'm sorry, but you need to learn this lesson." She walked toward him and raised his sword one more time, ready for the final exchange that would determine the winner. Raised his sword high above his head with both hands. His arms trembled from exhaustion, but he poured every last bit of his strength into this final strike. This was a killing blow, meant to split an enemy from head to waist. The crowd held its breath. "This ends now, human," roared. The massive blade came down like a falling star. The air screamed as the metal cut through it. The strike was perfect, too fast to dodge, too powerful to deflect. This was the technique that had won his reputation, the move that had defeated countless warriors before. Didn't dodge. She stepped forward, directly into the path of the sword. The crowd gasped, shouted no from the observation deck. It looked like suicide. Then's hands shot up. She caught the blade between her palms. The sword stopped, completely, totally, as if it had hit an invisible wall. The entire arena fell silent. 10,000 aliens from 40 different species stopped breathing at the same moment. The only sound was the faint hum of the station's life support systems. Stared at his sword, then at the small human woman holding it, then back at his sword again. His mind couldn't process what he was seeing. It was impossible. The blade had been moving with enough force to crush stone. He had put all his strength, all his body weight, all his momentum into that strike. And it had simply stopped. Hal whispered. His face remained calm. "Technique," she said quietly, "an understanding of physics." Her hands weren't actually touching the sharp edge of the blade. That would have cut through her skin like paper, no matter how strong she was. Instead, her palms were pressed against the flat sides of the sword, catching it in a perfect clap. The angle was exact. If she was off by even a degree, her hands would have slipped and the blade would have continued down. But more than that, she had timed the catch perfectly. She hadn't tried to stop the sword at full speed. She had met it at the apex of the swing, the moment when it was moving fastest but before gravity added its full weight to the blow. And she had matched its momentum with her own forward movement, absorbing the energy instead of fighting against it directly. Still, the fact remained. She was holding a war blade that weighed 50 pounds, suspended in midair, against the pull of a warrior 8 times stronger than most species. Pulled on the sword, trying to free it from her grip. It didn't budge. He pulled harder, his muscles straining, his armor creaking with the effort. Nothing. It was like the sword had been welded in place. "Let go," demanded. "You first," replied. His pride wouldn't allow it. He was a warrior, undefeated champion of the coalition arena. He would not surrender his weapon to anyone, especially not to a human. He yanked on the sword with all his remaining strength. His grip didn't slip even a millimeter. In the observation deck was frantically taking readings with every scanner he had. "This is incredible," he breathed. "The pressure sensors on her gloves are showing grip force of over 120 kilograms per hand. That's far beyond normal human capacity." "How is she doing it?" asked. "Human hands are actually remarkably strong," explained, his voice excited despite the tense situation. "Our opposable thumbs and the muscle structure of our hands evolved to grip and climb and use tools. Most species in the galaxy have simpler hand structures because they didn't need the same manipulation abilities. But humans," he looked up from his pad, "we can generate grip force that's disproportionate to our size." "But still," said, watching hold the sword steady, "that much strength shouldn't be possible." "She's using more than just hand strength," said. "Look at her posture. She's locked her wrists, elbows, and shoulders. The force is being distributed through her entire skeletal structure, down into her legs and feet. And her feet are positioned perfectly to brace against the floor. It's not just strength, it's efficiency." Down in the arena, something changed in its expression. A decision had been made. "Commander," she said quietly, "you insulted my species. You called us weak. You said we were prey. I need you to understand something very important." Her hands shifted position on the sword. Instead of gripping the flat sides near the edge, she moved them apart, one hand near the hilt and one near the tip. She adjusted her stance. "Humans evolved on a world that was trying to kill them," continued. "Ice ages, droughts, predators that were bigger, faster, and stronger than us. We survived not because we were the most powerful, but because we were stubborn, because we refused to give up, because we learned to use what we had more efficiently than anything else could use what they had." Her forearms tensed. The muscles in her shoulders stood out clearly. "And one thing humans learned very early," she said, "is that the right amount of force, applied at the right point, can break almost anything." She began to bend the sword. The blade, forged in plasma furnaces hot enough to melt through starship hulls, began to curve. Slowly at first, then faster. A high-pitched whine filled the arena as the molecular bonds in the metal started to protest. Released the hilt and stumbled backward, his eyes wide with horror. "No," he said. "No, that's impossible. That blade can cut through ship armor. It's rated to withstand." The whine became a screech. Hairline fractures appeared along the surface of the blade. His expression didn't change. She was concentrating completely on what she was doing. Her hands applied steady, even pressure on both sides of the blade. She wasn't trying to muscle it into submission with raw strength. She was finding the stress points, the weak spots in the metal's structure, and applying force there with surgical precision. The sword bent further, 30 degrees, 45, 60. Then, with a sound like a gunshot, it snapped. The crack echoed through the arena like thunder. The two halves of the blade fell from his hands and clattered on the floor at his feet. Small pieces of scattered across the ground, glittering under the lights. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The impossible had just happened, and every mind in the arena was struggling to accept it. Lowered her hands to her sides. She wasn't even breathing hard. That blade was a weapon, a tool, but tools can be broken if you understand their weaknesses. She looked at directly. The same is true of warriors who rely only on strength and reputation. She took a step back and waited, looked down at the broken pieces of his ancestral sword. The blade had been passed down through 7 generations of his family. It had survived hundreds of battles. It had cut through enemies and obstacles that should have been impossible to defeat. And a human woman half his size had snapped it like a dry stick. Something broke inside in that moment. Not his spirit were too proud for that, but his certainty, his absolute belief that he understood combat and strength and power. He had been wrong about everything. Slowly, with movements that seemed to pain him more than any physical wound, lowered himself to one knee. His head bowed forward. In the language of the Empire, in front of 10,000 witnesses from 40 different worlds, he spoke the words that no one had ever heard him say. "I yield." The arena exploded into chaos. Aliens were screaming, roaring, whistling, and making sounds of shock in hundreds of different ways. Some were celebrating, some were arguing, some were simply standing in stunned silence. In the observation deck, his communicator lit up with incoming messages from every major species in the coalition. They all wanted to know the same thing: what had just happened? Who were these humans? And what else could they do? Was crying and laughing at the same time. Was recording everything frantically, already composing the report he would send to Earth Command. And watched as medical teams rushed onto the arena floor to check both combatants. Was uninjured but appeared to be in shock. Waved the medics away from herself, insisting she was fine. As walked toward the exit, the crowd's reaction changed. The shouting died down. And then, starting from one section and spreading like wildfire through the arena, the aliens began to make their species versions of applause. They were cheering for her. Smiled, everything had just changed. For humanity, for the coalition, for the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be strong. And it had all changed because one woman refused to accept an insult and knew exactly what she was capable of. The medical bay on Helios 7 was filled with confused and doctors from a dozen different species. They surrounded, who sat patiently on an examination table while they scanned her with every instrument they had. She had agreed to a full examination after the fight, partly because coalition rules required it, and partly because she knew the data would be valuable. "This makes no sense," muttered Doctor, a physician with compound eyes and delicate antennae. "Her muscle density is only slightly above average for her species. Her bone structure is normal. There's no enhancement, no cybernetics, no genetic modification." The doctor's translator clicked with frustration. How did she generate that much force? Stepped forward carrying his own data pad. "May I explain?" The assembled medical staff turned to look at him. Suddenly felt very small among all these alien doctors, but he cleared his throat and continued. "Humans evolved on a planet called Earth," he began. "By galactic standards, Earth has strong gravity, about 9.8 meters per second squared. That's in the upper range of habitable worlds. Most coalition species evolved on planets with 30 to 50% less gravity." "We know this," said a reptilian doctor impatiently. "It still doesn't explain." "I'm not finished," interrupted, then immediately apologized. "Sorry, but there's more. Earth's gravity isn't the only factor. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. Do you know what that means?" Most of the doctors shook their heads or made negative gestures with various appendages. "It means humans hunted prey by chasing it until it collapsed from exhaustion," explained. "We're not the fastest species. We're not the strongest, but we can keep moving for hours, sometimes days, in extreme heat and harsh conditions. Our bodies are designed for endurance above all else." He pulled up a holographic display showing human anatomy. "Look at our skeletal structure. Our bones aren't just solid calcium. They're reinforced with a lattice structure that makes them resistant to compression and tension forces. Our tendons and ligaments are incredibly tough. And our muscles," he zoomed in on the hand structure, Human hands have over 30 bones and more than 40 muscles. We evolved opposable thumbs and a grip structure that let us create and use tools. Tools don't explain breaking a blade, pointed out. No, but technique does, said a new voice. Everyone turned, had been sitting quietly through the whole discussion, but now she stood up. May I? Nodded and handed her the controls for the holographic display, pulled up a recording of the moment she had caught and broken sword. She slowed it down to 1/10 speed. Look at my positioning, she said, pointing to her hands. I didn't try to stop the blade with raw strength. I caught it at the exact moment when its momentum could be redirected, and I didn't grip the edge that would have cut through my skin. I clamped the flat sides between my palms. She advanced the video frame by frame. When I bent the blade, I wasn't using just my hands. Watch my whole body. My stance distributes the force through my legs and into the floor. My core muscles are engaged. My shoulders, arms, and hands work together as a single mechanical system. And most importantly, she zoomed in on her hand position. I applied force at the weakest points in the blade structure. Every material has stress points. If you understand physics and engineering, you can exploit them. The doctors were silent, studying the footage. So it's not superhuman strength, said slowly. It's understanding how to use the strength you have. Exactly, confirmed. Commander is much stronger than me in terms of raw muscle power, but strength without technique is just wasted energy. I've trained for 15 years in various martial arts. Every movement I make serves a purpose. I don't waste motion. I don't fight against physics, I use physics. Added, this is why humans succeeded on Earth despite being weaker than many predators. We learned to use leverage, tools, and technique to overcome physical disadvantages. It became part of our nature. A small, furry doctor in the back spoke up. How many humans can do what she did? Considered the question. Break a blade. With the right training, body mechanics, and understanding of material science, probably tens of thousands at minimum, maybe more. We have special forces soldiers, martial arts masters, athletes, engineers. Earth has about 8 billion people. A small percentage of a large number is still a very large number. The doctors looked at each other with expressions that ranged from amazement to concern. One of them quietly excused himself, probably to report this information to his government. The door to the medical bay suddenly opened. 2 guards entered, their armor polished and formal. Behind them walked Commander. The room fell silent, looked different now. He wore simple robes instead of armor, and he walked with his head bowed slightly, a gesture of humility that rarely showed. I request a private audience with Lieutenant, said, his voice much quieter than before. The medical staff quickly cleared out, gathering their equipment and hurrying through the exits. Soon only, and remained. Nodded to that it was okay for him to stay. Stood in silence for a long moment, then he spoke. I came to apologize. You already yielded, said, that's enough. No, multiple eyes fixed on her. I need you to understand, are raised from birth believing we are the ultimate warriors. Our entire culture revolves around strength and combat. For 3 cycles I have been undefeated. I believed I understood what it meant to be powerful. He paused. You showed me that I understood nothing. You're a skilled fighter, said honestly. Your technique with that sword was excellent. You're fast, strong, and experienced. But I relied only on those things, replied. I never thought about efficiency, about physics, about understanding my opponent. I simply attacked with force and expected to win because I always had before. His voice dropped lower. When you caught my blade, I felt something I have not felt since I was a young warrior in training. Fear, and then confusion. And then when you broke my ancestral sword, I felt shame. You shouldn't feel shame, said. You fought with honor. You accepted defeat with dignity. That takes more courage than winning. Made a gesture with his hands that's translator marked as grateful acknowledgement. Then he asked, how did you train for this? How long did it take? Smiled slightly. I started martial arts training when I was 6 years old, 20 years ago. My father was a master of Hapkido. My mother taught Taekwondo. They believed that discipline and self-defense were important life skills. She looked down at her hands. But I didn't train specifically to fight. I trained to be the best version of myself that I could be, to understand my body's capabilities and limitations, to learn patience and timing. And that training let you defeat me. That training let me understand that defeating you wasn't about being stronger. It was about being smarter, more efficient, more patient. Met his eyes directly. You charged at me with everything you had from the beginning. You burned through your energy quickly. I waited. I learned your patterns. And then I used your own strength against you. Was quiet for another long moment. Then he said something that surprised both and. I want to learn. Learn what? Asked. Everything, your fighting techniques, your philosophy, how to fight with efficiency instead of just power, straightened up. I am still a warrior, that will never change, but I want to be a better warrior, a smarter warrior, and you can teach me that. Looked at who shrugged. She turned back to, I'm assigned to the diplomatic mission. I don't know how long we'll be on this station. Then teach me while you are here, said. And if you leave, I will request permission to travel to Earth and continue learning there. I have watched the recording of our fight 17 times. Each time I see something new, some detail of positioning or timing that I missed before. You have knowledge that could change how every warrior in the galaxy thinks about combat. Considered this carefully. Finally, she nodded. All right, but you need to understand something first. What I'll teach you isn't about fancy moves or secret techniques. It's about patience. It's about understanding your own body and your opponent's body. It's about using your mind as much as your muscles. It's hard work and it takes years to master. I understand, said. I am willing to work. Then we start tomorrow morning, 0600 station time. Bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect and culture. Then he turned and left, his guards following behind him. After he was gone, let out a long breath. Well, that was unexpected. Was it? Asked, smiling. He's a warrior. Warriors respect strength and skill. Once he got over his injured pride, this was the natural next step. I suppose so. Looked at her. You know this is going to spread, right? Word of what you did. Every species in the coalition is going to be reassessing humanity. Good, said simply. Maybe they'll think twice before calling us weak. Outside the medical bay, the galaxy was indeed talking about what had happened. Messages flew between worlds at faster-than-light speeds. Governments called emergency meetings. Military strategists pulled up every piece of data they had on human capabilities. And on Earth, humanity watched the recordings of the fight and felt a surge of pride. They had been the members of the Galactic Coalition, uncertain of their place among species that had been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Now they knew, they belonged, and they were stronger than anyone had imagined. 3 months had passed since the fight in the arena. The galaxy had changed in ways both small and large. Captain stood in the Coalition Assembly Hall, a massive chamber that could hold representatives from all 247 member species. Today the hall was packed to capacity. Every seat was filled, and many delegates stood in the back. All eyes were on the small group of humans at the central podium. Captain of Earth, announced the assembly speaker, a wise-looking being made of crystalline structures that refracted light into rainbow patterns. The council recognizes you. Please present your report. Stepped up to the podium, trying not to feel intimidated by the thousands of aliens watching him. He had given speeches before, but never to an audience like this. Honored delegates, he began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. 3 months ago, there was an incident in the Helios 7 arena. My security officer, Lieutenant, accepted a challenge from Commander of the Empire. Many of you have seen the recordings of what happened. Many of you have asked questions about human capabilities. Today, I'm here to provide clarity. He activated a holographic display showing Earth rotating slowly in space. Humans come from a world we call Earth. By your standards, it's a dangerous planet, strong gravity, extreme weather patterns, a history of ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and mass extinctions. Humans evolved not because we were the strongest or fastest, but because we were adaptable. We learned to work together. We learned to create tools. And most importantly, we learned that survival isn't about raw power. It's about using what you have as efficiently as possible. A delegate from the species raised a tentacle. "Captain, are all humans as capable as Lieutenant?" "No," answered honestly. "Lieutenant has trained for 20 years in combat disciplines. She represents the upper range of human physical capability. But," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "given proper training, any healthy human could learn the same techniques she used. We have military forces, athletes, and specialists who are equally skilled in different areas. Earth has 8 billion people. That's a large population by coalition standards." Another delegate spoke up, this one from a species that looked like a floating jellyfish with bioluminescent patterns. "Are we to understand that humanity has been hiding its true capabilities?" "No," said firmly. "We have never lied about what we can do, but in our first months as coalition members, we were cautious. We wanted to observe and learn before showing everything we were capable of. That's not deception, that's wisdom. How many species in this chamber can honestly say they revealed all their capabilities in their first year of membership?" A murmur ran through the assembly. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. "Had a point." "The truth is simple," continued. "Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the fastest or the longest lived. But we're very good at taking whatever advantages we have and using them to overcome our disadvantages. That's how we survived on Earth. That's how we'll contribute to the coalition." The crystalline speaker chimed softly. "The Council acknowledges your words, Captain. We have discussed this matter at length and have reached several decisions." Felt his heart beat faster. This was the moment that would determine humanity's future in the coalition. "First," the speaker announced, "Earth's status as a probationary member is hereby ended. You are granted full coalition membership with all rights and responsibilities. Second, Earth is invited to contribute personnel to coalition security forces. Third, we formally apologize for any underestimation of your species' capabilities." Relief flooded through. He bowed respectfully. "The people of Earth are honored and grateful." "There is one additional matter," the speaker said. "Lieutenant has received numerous requests from various species to provide training in human combat techniques. The Council supports this cultural exchange. We believe all species can benefit from learning humanity's approach to efficiency and technique over raw strength." Smiled. "Lieutenant has agreed to serve as an instructor, provided she can return to Earth periodically to continue her own training." "Acceptable. This session is concluded." As the delegates began filing out of the assembly hall, received a message on his communicator. It was from, asking him to meet her at the station's observation deck. He found her there 20 minutes later, standing at the large window that looked out into space. Next to her stood Commander. Both of them were covered in sweat, clearly having just finished a training session. Captain greeted him with a smile. "How did the assembly go?" "We're full members now," replied, "and you're officially a coalition combat instructor." "I heard the speaker sent me a message." She looked out at the stars. "It's strange. 3 months ago I was just doing my job. Now I'm supposedly representing all of humanity." "You are representing us," said, "and you're doing it well." Spoke up. "Lieutenant is an excellent teacher. In 3 months she has taught me more about combat than I learned in 20 years of training." The big warrior actually looked pleased. "She is patient, clear, and most importantly, she explains the reasoning behind every technique. I understand now that fighting is not about power, it is about understanding." "How are the other students?" asked. We have 67 students now, replied. Representatives from 40 different species. Some of them are military personnel. Some are just curious individuals who want to learn. I've had to adjust my teaching for different body types and capabilities, but the core principles work for everyone. What principles? Was genuinely curious. Efficiency, said simply. Understanding physics. Using your opponent's strength against them. Patience and timing. Most species in the galaxy have focused on developing their natural advantages, strength, speed, toxins, whatever. But they haven't thought about how to maximize those advantages through technique and strategy. Nodded, are strong, but I relied on strength alone, has taught me leverage, positioning, how to read an opponent's body language. Now when I fight, I think, I plan, I adapt. I'm still strong, but now that strength has direction. A group of aliens approached from across the observation deck. Recognized several of them military officers from different species, all high-ranking. Leading them was General, a massive reptilian warrior from the Dominion. Captain rumbled in a voice like grinding rocks. Lieutenant, I come with a proposal. I'm listening, said cautiously, though we're one of the more aggressive species in the Coalition. The Coalition faces threats from beyond our borders, explained. Pirates, rogue AI fleets, hostile species that refuse to join us. For these threats, we need warriors. But after watching lieutenants approach to combat, I believe we have been thinking about warfare incorrectly. How so? Asked. We have focused on building bigger ships, stronger weapons, more powerful soldiers, but humans have shown us that efficiency matters more than size, strategy matters more than brute force. Eyes, which were vertical slits like a cat's, focused on. I propose a joint training program, soldiers and human soldiers training together. We teach you our combat forms and you teach us yours. We learn from each other. Glanced at, who gave a small nod. That sounds beneficial for both our species, said. I'll need to discuss it with Earth Command, but I believe they'll approve. Excellent, we will begin planning immediately. Turned to leave, then paused. One more thing, Lieutenant. On behalf of the Dominion, I apologize. When humans first joined the Coalition, we viewed you as weak. We were wrong. Strength takes many forms, and yours may be the most dangerous of all. After the left leaned against the window rail. This is really happening. The whole galaxy is reassessing us. Is that a bad thing? Asked. I don't know yet. Being underestimated had advantages. People left us alone. They didn't see us as threats. But they also didn't see us as equals, pointed out, or as potential allies. Yes, some species might fear us now, but others respect us, and respect is the foundation for real partnerships. His communicator beeped. He checked it and his eyes widened. There's a situation developing on the frontier. A Coalition outpost is under attack by unknown hostiles. They're asking for military assistance. What species are they requesting? Asked. Looked up from his communicator, a mix of pride and concern on his face. They specifically requested human forces. Earth's frigate Horizon is the nearest military ship. The Council wants them to respond. The weight of that statement settled over all of them. This would be humanity's first real military action as Coalition members. The whole galaxy would be watching to see what humans could do in actual combat, not just arena demonstrations. The Horizon is a good ship, said quietly. Captain Minu is experienced. If anyone can handle this, it's his crew. I know. Looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human soldiers were about to fight on behalf of the Galactic Coalition. The outcome would shape humanity's reputation for generations. But then again, that's what had done in the arena 3 months ago. She had fought not just for herself, but for every human in the galaxy. And she had won, not through force, but through skill and understanding. Maybe that was humanity's real strength. Not power, but the wisdom to use power correctly. Come on, said, straightening up. We should get to the command center. If our people are going into battle, we should at least be there to monitor the situation. As they walked through the corridors of Helios 7, noticed how other species looked at them now. There was respect in those alien eyes. Some caution, yes, but also curiosity and even admiration. 3 months ago, humans had been the new species, the unknowns, the ones everyone underestimated. Lieutenant had changed that with one fight. She had shown the galaxy that humans were not to be dismissed. But more importantly, she had shown that strength wasn't about size or raw power. It was about understanding, technique, patience, using what you have in the way possible. These were lessons that went beyond combat. They applied to diplomacy, science, trade, everything. And the galaxy was starting to understand that humans brought something unique to the coalition, not just physical capability, but a different way of thinking about problems. As entered the command center and saw the tactical displays showing the horizon moving into position at the frontier outpost, he felt a surge of pride. Humanity was small compared to many coalition species. Their technology was still developing. They had been members for less than a year. But they belonged here. They had earned their place. And whatever challenges came next, was confident that humans would face them the same way had faced in the arena, with skill, intelligence, and the determination to succeed against any odds. The age of humanity being underestimated was over. The age of humanity as a respected member of the galactic community had begun, and the age of humanity helping to protect and defend that community was starting right now. Outside the window, stars stretched away into infinity. Somewhere among them was Earth, the small blue world where 8 billion humans looked up at those same stars and dreamed of the future. That future had arrived, and it was going to be extraordinary,